Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Richard Moglen. Welcome back to another weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And as always, we'll go through both the fundamentals and technicals of all the stocks on my focus list, and I'll talk about the specific setup that I'm waiting for each of these stocks. And before we get started, if you do enjoy my videos, please go ahead and leave a like down below. It really does help me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. Starting things off, we've got ABNB, a recent IPO. Going back to the daily here, you can see not really the strongest growth numbers, but you've got a whole bunch of high quality funds here. And you can see that they just updated the March 21 numbers in terms of fund ownership. And you can see a nice increase as well, and a lot of high quality funds investing into the stock. And overall, this has been very shaky here, but it has been holding this pivot recently and a nice bullish outside day on Friday. So I'm looking for a breakout above last week's high, which would be a 2-2 reversal on the weekly. Moving on, let's go to the next stock, which is AMAT. And overall, as we'll get into later, as I'm watching SMH, I'm looking at a bunch of these different stocks. KLIC is also one I'm watching, but overall, a nice downward flag here. Great earnings estimates, fund ownership, high quality funds in there as well, and overall nice lower volume pullback here to the 21 EMA area. So maybe a move through these highs could be actionable and a break of this downward trend line. And then hopefully it challenges the 146 pivot and continues on with its uptrend. Moving on, we've got another recent IPO, Bumble. Volume has been drying up recently. And down here, you can see it's not yet profitable, but does have acceleration in terms of sales growth the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for 2022 as well. And a whole bunch of funds and high quality funds already owning shares. And overall, what I'm looking for is a kind of reversal here through these highs. And overall, I like how it's holding 60 here as it has during these past 2 pullbacks. Moving on, we've got Chipotle, and you can see nice earnings, not explosive here. This is a kind of slower mover, but you can see really strong estimates for 2021 and 2022. And the most recent estimates are revised upwards, which is a good sign. Confidence rating is an 89, a nice growth in fund ownership, and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well. And what I'm looking for is a breakout through the stage 2B pivot at 1564.91 on above average volume. Next up, we've got Coursera, another recent IPO. Definitely fits within the kind of changing how we work, live, and play. And overall, you can see nice sales growth. Probably they're just taking the past year and dividing by 4. That's why it's exactly the same. And no estimates just yet. So this is a little bit more speculative as it tries to form out its IPO base. And so far, no fund ownership info is available. But of course, this is a very recent IPO. Next up, we've got CrowdStrike as it forms out this stage 3 cup here. Really fantastic earnings, sales, and margins here. You've got basically acceleration in all 3 categories over the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for 2023. And you can see the overall confidence rating is an 87, increasing fund ownership, and 1 high quality fund in there as well. And I really liked how strong it was on this past Friday when a lot of the stocks that had been building the right size got hit a little bit. And overall, I'm looking for a break through this consolidation pivot. And that high is at 219 flat. And I want to see that happen on above average volume. And it just retook kind of this pivot here, which isn't a true kind of double bottom pivot because this isn't quite high enough within the space. And I'm not sure if this undercut, this probably is a higher low. So moving on, we've got Etsy, another former leader. Once again, very strong earnings, sales, and margins. Decent estimates, not the strongest here, but I like how the revisions for 2022 are up. Overall confidence rating is a 92, increase in fund ownership, and 4 high quality funds in there as well. And it's forming a stage 2 here, and I'm looking for a move through this spot on volume, and that pivot is at 227 flat. And you could also use a 2-2 reversal on Monday if it breaks through this Friday high after it's found support at the 50-day SMA and 21 EMA area. A nice confluence there. Moving on, we've got FUTU, which is forming out a flag here on declining volume and below average volume here, right at 150. Overall, fantastic earnings, sales, and margins, great estimates. Comms rating is a 99, increasing fund ownership, but not any high quality funds and also not a huge number of funds invest into the stock. But overall, it had a very strong run a pretty deep consolidation, which is one knock against it. This isn't really a proper base, but so far I like how it's forming out this flag on lower volume against the 50 SMA area. I'm looking for a break of this downward trend line or a break of this pivot at 164.5. Next up, we've got LRCX, another semiconductor name, and overall nice earnings, sales, and margins the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for 2021. Comms rating is a 9.9, increasing fund ownership, and 5 high-quality funds in there as well. And what I'm looking for is a breakout above this high or potentially this high, but keep in mind earnings are in 3 days for this stock. Next up, we've got LYFT, and overall you can see no real earnings growth, sales growth, or margins growth here, but it is supposed to be profitable in 2022, and the most recent revisions are up, which is a very good sign. Comms rating is very poor at 60, but you've got increasing fund ownership and 1 high-quality fund in there as well. And I really like how it's consolidating here below the 68.28 mark and finding support now at the 21 EMA. And you've also got a declining trend line here that's just under and a nice inside day on this Friday. And going to a weekly, it's kind of normal that it's consolidating here at this level because it does line up with this previous high. So eventually I do want to see a challenge of this point of resistance on a large volume. And you can see on the weekly here, this kind of clear hammer off the 10-week area, which usually is a pretty good entry point. So you've also got the weekly high as potential 2-2 pivot on a weekly time frame. Moving on, we've got NET, and this was hit hard on this past Friday, taking out these lows, but so far it's consolidating here after a really strong move up on volume. Once again, you've got earnings in 18 days, so for all of these stocks, make sure you know when their earnings dates are, and in general, for any stocks you own or are interested in, make sure you know that date because it's incredibly important, and you want to know when that occurs so you can manage your risk around that event. But overall, nice sales growth the past 4 quarters. Just supposed to be profitable in 2022. Comms rating only a 58. That's one knock against the stock, but you've got a nice increase in fund ownership and 3 high-quality funds in there as well. And overall, you've got the 50-day as a potential pivot here, as well as the high-volume close, as well as this high right near 80, and also the 77.04 pivot. So ideally, it takes all those out in one bar, and you've also got these highs here as a potential point of entry. Moving on, we've got NVCR, and overall it had a monster gap up here, and you can see that it finished pretty much in the middle here, but if you think about the true bar range as this close to this high, it finished well in the top half and basically the top 25% of that bar here. And overall, it's right at this stage 3 consolidation pivot with a standard pivot of 194.75. You've also got the high volume close as a potential pivot, and of course, the kind of double Livermore level at 200. Looking at the earnings and sales, you can see a little bit of a slowdown this most recent quarter, but still very strong. Estimates for 2021 are poor, but the estimates are very strong for 2022. I don't like how the revisions are downwards. Overall, the comms rating is an 83, increase in fund ownership, and 2 high-quality funds in there as well. Moving on, we've got RBLX, Roblox, and overall you can see a bunch of volatility here right near the pivots, but overall accelerating sales the past 4 quarters, decent estimates for 2022, although the most recent estimate revisions are downwards. Comms rating is only a 31. You've already got 5 funds in here, and what I'm looking for is potentially if we go to a 65-minute chart, actually let's do a 60-minute chart, you've got some pivots here at this point, and of course at the IPO base pivot here, and also this declining trend line, which is a little bit steep. So there's a couple different ways to play this, but of course you have to manage your risk because this is a little bit more of a volatile name given that it is a recent IPO. Next up, we've got SC or C Limited. You can see very strong sales growth the past 4 quarters, not supposed to be profitable in 2021 or 2022. The comms rating is a 60, nice increase in fund ownership, and 2 high-quality funds in there as well. And overall, it's formed a stage 4 cup with handle here with a standard pivot of 258.6. You've also got these highs as potential pivots as well. And going over to a weekly, you've also got a 2-2 reversal potentially next week if it has a nice bar here and takes out these highs from the previous week. So that is SE, and next up we've got the semiconductor ETF, which looks very similar to a lot of the semiconductor stocks, obviously forming a nice handle here below the standard pivot, which is at 258.59, and I'm looking for a break through this line on volume and follow through the pivot. Moving on, we've got Snapchat, which also took a hit like NET on this past Friday, but overall found support at the 50 SMA and the 60 level. So I'm looking for some consolidation here, and then maybe a flag out, and then a break to the upside through this high, as well as the 65.13 pivot as well. Moving on, we've got SQ, which moved up strongly on volume here. Earnings are in 18 days. You have nice growth in earnings, sales, and margins the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022. Overall comps rating very strong at 98. Nice increase in fund ownership, and 6 high-quality funds in there as well. Overall, potentially an undercut and reclaim of this pivot here at the 250 mark, or maybe it goes sideways on lower volume here, and then kind of forms a consolidation pivot, and then you could buy a breakout through these highs. So that is SQ, and next up we've got Twitter, and overall nice earnings and sales growth the past quarter. Decent estimates for 2022, up 33% with the revisions up as well. Comms rating is a 91, nice increase in fund ownership, and 3 high-quality funds in there as well. And for this one, I'm watching for a break through this pivot or these highs as well, or potentially an undercut and a reclaim of the 50-day moving average and a move up on volume. Next up, we've got Uber, and you can see no real sales growth, earnings growth here. Not supposed to be profitable within the next 2 years. The comms rating is a 69, nice increase in fund ownership, and 4 high-quality funds in there as well. And what I'm watching for is a breakout above the 61.02 pivot, or potentially this high as well, which is at 61.5 on above average volume, and then potentially a challenge of the stage 2 standard pivot at 64.05. And lastly, we've got VZIO, which is another recent IPO, and overall you can see very strong sales growth, earnings growth the past 2 quarters. No estimates for 2021 or 2022. Comms rating is a 93, and no fund information just yet. Overall, it had kind of a mixed day on Friday. Potentially it was knocked down by the overall kind of growth weakness, but potentially kind of open here within the wick above this close, and then a push out here through the highs and the standard IPO base pivot at 25.9. So that's my plan for this week. You've got a wide variety of setups here that are either actionable early next week or developing setups. And overall, remember, you've always got to plan out your trades beforehand, both buy points and sell points. You've always got to be managing your risk. And other than that, best of luck next week. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos.